Hello, a very warm welcome from UCL. My name is Lawrence Bellamy. I have a number of different roles in the biological sciences degrees. I am kind of one of I'm the head of admissions, so I'm responsible for kind of running these opening days, giving you an oversight of UCL. I'm also one of the co-heads of teaching here on our degree pathways. And my aim today is to give you an overview of biological sciences and why I think studying biological sciences at UCL deserves your attention, in my opinion. I really, I guess from a personal perspective, I did my undergraduate here at UCL. I started in 2003. I did my PhD here, completed that in 2012, and then I've started working kind of as a teacher here in our department. So I've been here for well over 20 years in different guises now, and I can honestly say I wouldn't still be here if UCL wasn't just a fantastic place to study and to work. I really do kind of believe in UCL, and really I'm passionate about our biological sciences degree pathways. So why would you want to study here at biological sciences here at UCL? A pretty bad answer is we do fairly well in the rankings. So we consistently rank around, yeah, we sit around well within the top 20. Normally within the top 10 for the global rankings. This year we slightly slipped out of that in 16th. But different rankings consistently place us very highly on teaching biological sciences. But it is not a good way to pick what you want, where you should study. A far better way of thinking about where you want to study is how they teach and why they teach it that way. And the reason why UCL is extremely strong for teaching biological sciences is because we embed research within our teaching. And that is our philosophy throughout the degree, right from the start. So when you look at rankings for research output, the biological sciences, we consistently rank in the top 3 in the world. We are a powerhouse for biological sciences research. And I'll give an overview of some of the questions we look at later on. And because of that, our philosophy is to teach you to become professional researchers by the end of your degree. So if you're thinking of a career that involves either actively performing biological research, so let's say you want to do a PhD program and go on to a research-based career. If you want to do a career that involves an understanding of biological research, be it in publishing or say civil service or some consultancy or pharmaceutical career, again, having an understanding of biological research is really important, and therefore you might want to consider studying here at UCL. So we embed research right from the start of our degree. So for example, right from the start, in term 1 of your first year, I run a first year course called quantitative biology. And it's essentially a slightly sexier name for statistics for biologists. If you're a biologist, you need to know how to interpret and understanding your results. So you need some fundamental understanding of statistics. So the way we teach statistics isn't through giving you like some textbook and you're trying to answer like different questions and on stats. Your way we teach it is through the actual research that we do here at UCL. We teach you through data sets that we have produced here in our academic department. We teach you the tools that professional scientists use to analyze their data sets. So for example, if you're a researcher doing statistical analysis, you will spend a lot of time using a computational software called R, and we teach you R right from the first year, first term. The main assessment for that course is where I get a guest lecturer who works here at UCL. They talk about some of their research that they're doing, and you have to analyze unpublished work that they've produced. So, for example, in previous years, I've had students look at um, the effects that um, when you get infected with malaria, you get changes in protein levels. So we've investigated the biology of that. I've looked at the effects of what we call sperm competition on some flies. So some flies, they mate with different males. Their ejaculates will compete to fertilize the eggs of that female. So we've investigated that. And these are all kind of real data sets that are collected here at UCL that you are analyzing right from the start. And this will end the end of your degrees, your final year research project. And here you will have the option of actually working on a real kind of research question. You're not doing, say, a piece of science where we know or we have some expectation of what the result is going to be. You are expected to make a contribution to knowledge, right? You're pushing a field forwards and you're genuinely discovering something new. And for me, I remember when I was an undergraduate, when you kind of make that discovery, it is quite intoxicating, right? Because you've become a world expert in that particular field. And that's what you will end up as a world expert in that particular research field. Admittedly, it's quite a specific field, given you're quite early on in your research career, but that is the level you will get at. So if you're interested in kind of that approach to teaching, that's kind of a good reason to study here at UCL. I understand the importance of these virtual open days. Not everybody has the opportunity to come to UCL, but it is unquestionably a shame. UCL is a wonderful place to be. Although it's a city-based university, it's quite unique in that it is a very old university. It's the third oldest university in the UK, only behind Oxford and Cambridge. But because it's so old, all the buildings, all the different faculties are essentially located on the same campus. We call it the Bloomsbury campus. So although we're not a campus-based university, it very much does have that feel as a campus-based university. There are so many different faculties, all based around kind of this main UCL quad building, including the biological sciences. We are kind of a 1-minute walk from this particular building. So we're all kind of located around this one area, and there's a lot of diversity in kind of what we teach. There are 11 different faculties. The biological sciences is based in the Faculty of Life Sciences, but we teach everything: your arts, your humanities, your laws. So there are 11 different faculties spanning quite wide different fields. We have a large student cohort, about 14,000 students. So we have a very large diversity of students, over 42,000 staff, faculty members. We are kind of it's a really kind of bustling area during term time, and it really is kind of a wonderful place to be. We are located kind of in the centre of London. We are probably 10-minute walk from, say, the British Library. If you want to get to the River Thames, it's probably no more than a 20-minute walk. So we are located kind of right in the heart of London as well, which is a wonderful place to spend 3 or 4 years of your life. So it is a really kind of great location as well. UCL. And if you do have the opportunity of coming here at some point, I'm not saying you have to come for, say, an open day, but if you're able to visit between now and, say, when you're eventually making your decision of which university to come to, do come to kind of the UCL area, the Bloomsbury campus, just to kind of walk around and see what it's like. So it is a wonderful place to be. So within the biological sciences, we have a number of different degrees. We have 7 different degrees in total, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in detail. For the most part, they all come in 2 different flavors. You have a 3-year BSc, we call that the Bachelor of Science, the BSc, and we have the 4-year integrated Masters of Science. So it's integrated, that means it's still an undergraduate degree. but you come out with an MSci, is a master, you're a Master of Science by the end. It's not a graduate degree. You can do a graduate MSc, but this is an integrated master's. So we have a 3-year version and a 4-year version of our undergraduate degrees. For the most part, you can do those different degrees. There's one exception I'll mention later. We have kind of a generalist biological sciences degree. We have a biodiversity and conservation, a cell and developmental biology degree, computational biology, genetics, human genetics, and zoology. And I will talk a bit more about them later on. The teaching for the biological sciences is run by staff that are based in a research department. That research department is called Genetics, Evolution, and Environment. And it's a team of about 46 to 50 academics who work in kind of a broad field within the biological sciences. So because there's a large number of academics, we actually kind of split the different research groups into these what we call research institutes, and they all answer kind of different questions. So we have, for example, the Center of Biodiversity and Environmental Research, we call that CBER. And they are answering some really important questions in regards to biodiversity, climate change, and habitat loss. So one of the major problems we face going in our future is how we deal with climate change and habitat loss and biodiversity loss, and what can we do to conserve what we have left. We have the Center of Life's Origins and Evolution. They are interested in questions such as classical questions of evolution, your natural selections, your sexual selections, but also we have groups that are interested in kind of what are the conditions that were present when life first arose. You know, what was kind of that spark that first gave rise to life itself. Another major problem we face as human beings is how we can age well. So we're very good at kind of extending our lifespans. Human lifespan has really increased year on year continually for the past 100 years. But because we are living longer, we are getting these kind of many age-related diseases. So the biggest killer in the UK today is dementias and Alzheimer's. You also have major killers like your cancers, your heart diseases, and all of these diseases are associated with aging. So how can we age better? How can we attack these age-related diseases? So we have one of the world's leading groups of we have one of the world leading institutes in aging called the Institute of Healthy Aging to answer those problems. We have the UCL Genetics Institute, very much interested in say how we can use genomics. Genomics is the way we compare different gene sequences. How can we use genomics to study our evolution and the evolution of other organisms? Computational biology is now interwoven into all different fields of biology. It is integral, it's here today. AI, of course, is now a big part of biological sciences research, and again is now being entwined in all these other different fields of biology. So because of that, we have the UCL Center of Computational Biology. And our newest institute, which isn't actually based on the main Bloomsbury campus here at UCL, we have the People and Nature Lab, and they're based at UCL East. We wouldn't send you out to this campus. It is based in the former Olympic Park where the 2012 Olympics took place in London, in Stratford. We wouldn't send you there, but you could do a research project there if you wanted. But they are interested in questions, how can nature and humans, how can we kind of coexist well? So all these kind of research institutes, they really are embedded to answering questions about you know, some of the major challenges we are facing as humans, right? So going into the future, you know, how can we feed our population, our continuing growing population in the face of climate change? Climate change is going to change weather conditions. We're beginning to see a greater number of famines in many countries caused by adverse weather effects. How can we engineer crops that are more resistant to famine? So we have a group here who are interested in what are the effects of climate change on plant evolution, and how can we improve crop productivity in the face of these challenges? So my point that I'm making is that the labs that we have based here are answering questions that are fundamental to our future. These are really important questions that we will depend on individuals such as yourselves, as these are problems that we hope you will be tackling in the future. So if you're interested in kind of learning through that sort of research, that's kind of the way why you might want to do a degree here at UCL. If you're kind of more interested in learning about fluffy animal facts, that's not a reason to do a degree here at UCL. It's not kind of how we would approach our teaching. So in terms of the structure of the degree, as I mentioned, we have like the 3-year BSc and the longer 4-year MSci. So in the first 2 years of these degrees, they're completely identical. So regardless of whether you apply to do a BSc or an MSci, there's no difference in the first 2 years of your degree. And indeed, you're pretty much free to switch between the BSc and the MSci. So let's say you've applied to do the BSc in biological sciences, and you suddenly think, oh, I want to switch onto the MSci program. That's very easy to do within the first 2 years of your degree. When you're applying to study here at UCL, it doesn't really actually make a difference whether you apply for the BSc or the MSci. It doesn't affect your probability of getting in. And as I said, you can switch between the two at any point between your first 2 years. In your first year, you're very much doing a foundation. You're kind of getting a taste of all our different degrees that we offer here at UCL. So you'll be doing some genetics, some cell biology, some biochemistry. And I'll talk more about those modules later on, as the first years are pretty set for all students. At the end of your first year, you select which route you want to proceed with. So which of those kind of 7 different degrees do you want to study for years for the remainder of your degree? In year 3, if you're on the BSc version, you're kind of on the final year of your degree. You'll get a chance to participate in a research project, which I'll talk about later on. But in years 3 and 4, if you're in year 4 of the MSci, you're very much learning at kind of the cutting edge of those particular fields. So what are the kind of the current questions that are being answered in those different topics? And again, particularly those last year modules, these are all kind of being taught, they are all being taught by the world experts in their particular fields. Because UCL is kind of a powerhouse for research, we really do attract the world leaders in their specific fields. And these are the individuals who will be teaching you for many of your different modules. So a little bit about our degrees. It's a little bit wordy, but you don't have to read it, and I will kind of give you the synopsis of each one. So there are 7 different degrees that we offer. The biological sciences is what we colloquially, casually refer to as our generalist degree. So this is a degree that's there for somebody who wants to take a very broad approach to the modules, or to their studies. So I'll show later on how we have some compulsory and optional modules for your degrees. This one's here for those who want to take a very broad study. So there'll be a very broad range of modules in terms of their compulsory modules. That said, it may be the case, and actually this was the case for me when I was an undergraduate, if you're interested in a particular field, so let's say you're more interested in the genetic side of things, but you want to come out with a generalist degree, there is that opportunity to do so as well. So you can still specialize in certain fields, but come out with a generalist degree at the end. Cell and developmental biology, that is there for people who want to take a more cellular and molecular approach to their degree. I always say it's pretty good for a student who's unsure whether they want to do biological sciences or biochemistry, because cell biology really does straddle both of those, right? To understand how cells communicate, how they grow, how they divide. A lot of those questions are biochemical. So you need a good understanding of biochemistry there as well. Many diseases are cellular. So cancer is just unregulated cell growth. That, of course, is a cellular disease. Many developmental diseases, microbiology, aging-related diseases involve cellular changes. So again, you'll be studying a lot of human diseases in that particular degree pathway as well. Genetics and human genetics, these degrees are extremely similar, and we're actually talking whether we need to have both of the degrees. But for your year, we have got both of these options still available, and I suspect your year might be the last year we offer them both. They are extremely similar because the majority of the compulsory modules are exactly the same for these degrees. The difference between them is essentially how human focused you want to take your approach to study of genetics. If you are more medically minded, maybe you're unsure whether you want to do medicine or something more human diseasey, human genetics is a good option for you. Or if you're thinking of doing sort of an undergraduate degree followed by postgraduate medicine, human genetics is a really good option. So there a lot of the genetic modules you take are related to human genetic diseases. If you want to take a slightly broader approach to your genetics, then maybe the genetics degree would be better. So for example, genetics is integral to all different degrees that we offer, really. For example, you might measure biodiversity by how much genetic diversity there is. So genetics is kind of one of those topics like computational biology that's really woven into all different fields. You know, cell biology, cancer is just faults in our genome that give rise to unregulated cell death. So if you want a slightly broad approach to your genetics, choose genetics. If you want a more human focus, we have the human genetics degree pathway. Next up is biodiversity and conservation, and this really is one of the most topical degrees that we have. I've already alluded to it, but one of the major challenges we face on our planet is how we are managing climate change. Climate change is now inevitable. It is something I would suspect we will never stop, at least not in the foreseeable future. Biodiversity loss is occurring as a result of habitat loss, climate change, pollution, and we need to know how to conserve what biodiversity we have left. So there's a large group here based in that Centre of Environment, based in that kind of research group institute who kind of focus in on these research questions. So if these sort of questions are of interest to you, then certainly consider biodiversity and conservation. If you want to take a more organismal approach to your studies, then zoology would be of interest. Zoology is we were the first university to offer a degree in zoology. So if you're more interested in, say, not just biodiversity and conservation, but animal form and function and physiology, then zoology would be of interest. And we actually have a zoological museum here at UCL, which you work a lot at. It's called the UCL Grant Museum. My bound window here that you see around me is kind of a picture from the UCL Grant Museum itself. So we have you'll end up working a lot there during your studies. Last but not least is the computational biology degree. Currently this is only available as a 4-year degree, so we don't offer a Bachelor of Science in computational biology. We only offer a Masters of Science, integrated Masters and MSci in computational biology. And computational biology, again, like genetics, is kind of integral to all different fields of biology. So in genetics, you might have heard of genomics, the idea that you can compare different gene sequences from different individuals. That is a computational field, right? We just can't do that by hand. The power, humans can't do that. You need computers to process all that data for you. So the genomics and proteinomics, comparing difference in protein expressions. All these kind of are computational questions. In biodiversity and conservation, we have groups that model changes in bird migratory behavior as a consequence of climate change, and they use computational models for that. We have a group here who study cancer through computational tools. So look at how computers can model the growth and treatment of different cancers. So computational biology, I believe this is true. We were certainly the first university to offer an undergraduate degree in computational biology. And I don't know if we are still the only one in the UK who offer this particular degree. So I mentioned that the first year is largely the same for all students. So this is kind of the first year, and each year of your degree, you'll have a certain number of compulsory modules. These are non-negotiable modules that you have to take. And then there are a certain number of optional modules. And right from year one, you can already start tailoring your degree to your own particular interests. So the compulsory modules are listed on the left. I put the module codes. Any module that starts with biol, B-I-O-L, is one that is run by the staff who teach biological sciences. So those are run by staff from genetics, evolution, and environment, that research department I mentioned earlier. But we are part of a larger division. We also include, say, structural molecular biology, SMB. They teach the biochemistry. So you'll see there, for example, the first module is biochemistry, that stands for. So that's run by the biochemistry department, essentially. So we have Bioc 1, chemistry and molecular biology. We have Cell, that's run by the Cell and Developmental Biology group, Cells and Development. Then there's quantitative biology, a module I mentioned earlier at the start that I run. Introduction to genetics, life on Earth, methods in ecology and evolution. But there's also some optional modules. So we have a term 1 optional module in either Bio 5 fundamentals of biology or Chem 10 chemistry for biology. These are both kind of chemistry-based modules, and it's largely how molecular you want to take your chemistry. If you want to take a more biochemical approach to your studies, or if you're interested in more kind of cell and developmental biology, I'd recommend more chemistry for biologists. If you want to look at more applied chemistry, so chemistry in the context of different biological systems. So for example, you might want to learn about water and how water can operate as a buffer. Well, if you look in, say, the oceans, changes in temperature of our oceans has changed that equilibrium of how water is operating as a buffer and has made our oceans more acidic. And that's led to events such as the bleaching of the coral reefs and the loss of biodiversity. So if you want this more applied approach to your studies, then you do Bio 5, fundamentals of biology. In term 2, we have Bio 4, introduction to microbiology. That's where again, of interest if you're more of a cell biologist or maybe a human geneticist. Or if you want to take a more biodiversity and conservation approach, we have Bio 53, biodiversity and conservation, which has my favorite bit of teaching of the year. We do a field trip at Blakeney Point, which is a field station that we own on the north coast of Norfolk, and it's just a beautiful nature reserve that we kind of have to ourselves, essentially, for a week. It's a beautiful place to be. So that's kind of the first year, and then from year 2 onwards, you select which route you want to work with. So this is the compulsory modules that are for the year 2 students on the generalist degree. So this is the biological sciences degree. I'm not going to show all our degrees, I'm just giving an example. But these modules you have to take, and again, they're quite broad in what they do. Some are biol, so run by staff in genetics, evolution, and environment. Some are run by other developments, other research, other divisions in the biosciences, so cell 9, integrative cell biology, for example. But one of the major advantages to our degrees is the number of optional modules that you have available to you. I do recommend whenever you're researching your degrees, look at what optional modules and compulsory modules you have. And because UCL is such a diverse university, we have a lot of diversity in our optional modules. So this is just some of the optional modules for the biological sciences students. And you can see some are really quite loosely, they're not even run in the division of biosciences. So there's a geography module in there at the bottom, for example. There's an anthropology module in there as well. You can also take elective modules, and these are modules that are not related to biology in any way at all. So for example, you can take a language module if you want. Some students take a business studies module as well. So there's a lot of options in terms of what modules you'll be able, you have the possibility of taking here at UCL. So the final year of your degree is dominated by your research project. As I mentioned, this is really kind of your opportunity to contribute to a real topic, make a real contribution to knowledge. And for me, it was always the most exciting period of my degree. And I think many undergraduates kind of agree, where really you're being embedded, you become a member of a research lab. And that's really quite an exciting thing to be involved with. There are a number of different research projects we have on offer. If you're on the 3-year program, so you're the BSc program, the 3rd year is your final year. There are 3 different research projects you can take. You have an individual research project. So this is where you're working under the supervision of one of those world experts, one of our 46 academics in our department. They are lab-based. And again, you're working on a real research project, right? You're expected to push that particular field forwards. We have a collaborative research project. This is where you're working in a small group of up to 4 or 5 students. And you're working on a slightly larger project, but again, you're expected to kind of do a real bit, you do a real bit of research. So they tend to be larger projects. So for example, last year, my favorite collaborative research project was one that looked at the causes of moth biodiversity loss in the UK. And each group member looked at a different factor, such as light pollution, habitat loss, pesticides use. So each individual took a different factor, researched it, experimented in some way, and they produced a really fantastic kind of overview of that particular topic. And I assume it's being published. There's also an investigative research project. These are largely literature-based reviews where you have a particular research question that can be answered through doing a literature review. If you're on the 4-year program, you have to do that investigative project in year 3. And then in your final year on the year 4, you spend 75% of your time working on an extended research project. So again, this is an individual research project working under the individual supervision of one of our academics. And again, you're expected to make kind of a substantial research output here. These projects, most of these projects, I would even say, go on to be published because they're of a publishable standard. You probably might not just be doing one experiment, you might be doing a series of experiments. And it's probably the closest you could be to working as a PhD student would be. So if you're thinking of doing a PhD, I would strongly recommend this particular degree route. One other thing I will mention before I stop talking is our study abroad program. So this is an optional route that we have embedded in our degrees. The idea is it's only part of the 4-year program. So if you're on a Bachelor's of Science, you have to switch onto the MSci program. And you spend the entirety of your 3rd year embedded in one of our partner institutions. And they really are kind of scattered throughout the world. So we have partnerships in the University of Auckland, in New Zealand. In Australia, we have partnerships with Melbourne, Sydney, Western Australia, and the University of Queensland. Oh, what's going on? There we go. In Europe, we have partnerships with the University of Prague and the University of Zurich. In Canada, we have partnerships with McGill University, the University of British Columbia, Waterloo and Simon Fraser University. And then in the United States of America, we have partnerships with the University of Texas, Stony Brook University, which is in the state of New York, the California Institute of Technology, Cornell University, the University of Florida, University of California as well. So these are kind of really powerhouse kind of in terms of what they research. These are really strong research-based institutions like UCL as well. And, you know, it's a great opportunity to kind of study abroad. You really get to be embedded in these other countries and cultures for an extended period of time. But there are also academic reasons for wanting to study abroad. I've had students who have studied on the Great Barrier Reef. Of course, we don't do much marine biology here at UCL. We are not by the coast, but many of the Australian institutes are very strong in marine biology. I've had students who worked in the tropics. I've had a student in Auckland who did 2 modules in winemaking at the University of Auckland, and she's just finished her degree looking at yeast genetic variation in yeasts that naturally occur on grapes that grow in the vineyards in Tuscany. So she spent a lot of her time in Italy, in Tuscany, which is nice work if you can get it. So there are kind of really good academic reasons for studying abroad. In terms of how our students do afterwards, we tend to do pretty well in terms of the average earnings of our students after their degree. This is data from 2022, which I'm a bit conscious is a little bit out of date, and I only have the BSc as well. I will try and get more recent statistics. But in terms of what students are doing afterwards, 85% of students are employed after our degrees, and of those who are employed, 85% are employed in kind of a highly skilled job. So a job where students need to have a degree in order to work in that field. So our students are doing pretty well. We actually have kind of a pretty good careers team here at UCL who help you with your career development. We also have the UCL Biology Society. So I always say one of the great things about UCL in terms of its diversity, no matter what your interests or niche interests, no matter what they are, there'll probably be a club or society dedicated to it here at UCL. For the biological sciences students, there is a biological society and they run events kind of essentially just for you guys. And one of my favorite things they do is they go to Cumberland Lodge. And it's essentially an informal gathering of staff and students in a particular royal house. So this is a house that is owned by the king, and he leases it out to universities so they can have these kind of academic retreats. And it's based in Windsor Park, which is where you might have heard of Windsor Palace, Windsor Castle, which is one of the king's big stately homes, and it's in that kind of park, Windsor Great Park. So it's a wonderful place to be. The food's fantastic, and it's a beautiful building. I really do recommend it if students get the opportunity. So I'll leave it there. I don't know if there's any questions. I would say it's not just me here. There is also how do I stop sharing? Stop. Sorry. I was once very good at teaching on Teams, but it's been a long time since I've really I used to do lots of teaching on Zoom, but it's been a long time since I've done that. But it's not so okay. So it's there's not just me here. There's also actual undergraduates. I think they span quite a few different years. We don't vet them in any way. So you can ask them whatever you want. I don't give them a script, and I'm absolutely honest there. They can be as brutally honest as they want. I am absolutely full of and do believe in transparency. So if you have any questions for me or for the students, what it's like to live in London or do our degrees or whatever you like, I'm welcome to open it to you. So I'll leave it there. I don't know if Ian wants to. Do you want to direct the questions?
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat and let you know if there are any questions.
Yeah, you're welcome to type them out if you
Yeah.
don't want to.
Okay, we've got an initial question from Alex Hodgkinson. Approximately what percentage go into finance, such as IB, and do a lot go into life science consulting?
Quite a few going to consulting for sure. The So there is quite a few who go into, say, the conservation of biodiversity. I've got a fair number of graduates that I know that have got into, say, this probably isn't the consulting you're thinking of if you're thinking of more finance, but there are many different types of consulting. So, for example, if a developer wants to develop a piece of land, they will need to have a survey done on the biodiversity of that area. So a number of different students have gone into kind of that field of consulting. In terms of finance itself, a lot of the computational skills and the problem-solving skills do lend themselves pretty well to kind of financial-based problems. That said, you would typically need a degree conversion course. You wouldn't go straight from an undergraduate degree in biological sciences to finance. And there have been students who have done that. So they've gone from some conversion into finance. If finance is what you're thinking, though, I'd probably be recommending more of an economics degree rather than a biological sciences degree.
Okay, we've got a question from Chris. If you're unsure what to study, what would be the best course to do?
Do you mean if you're unsure? Okay, so it depends what stage you're unsure of. If you're unsure if you want to do biology, I would say you should always do. When I think back to when I was trying to decide what to do, when I was at high school, if you liked science, if you liked chemistry and biology, the only thing you would be advised to do was medicine or maybe veterinary care. And in hindsight, the advice was absolutely terrible because those jobs are very important, right? If you want to be a GP, it's very important. If you want to help animals through veterinary science, sure, go for it. But in terms of the problems we face as human beings going into our future, those problems aren't being addressed by your GP in their surgery, right? They're being tackled by researchers in genetics, in evolution, in computational biology, because these problems of climate loss, how we feed people, how we deal with a health and aging population, those are kind of the major problems we face as biologists. So kind of approaching those sort of problems and general interest in biological questions. If that's of interest, that's a reason to do biology. If you're not sure which of your degrees you want, which of our degree options you want to do, for now, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. You have 2 years to decide which of those different pathways are of interest. In your first year, you really do get a taste of everything, right? It's so broad in terms of what you're learning. So that opportunity will come. And as I said, you can switch. You got that first year to really find out what you want to do. If you're still unsure at the end of your first year, I would say just do whatever interests you. You will know which modules you enjoyed the most. You might have absolutely hated biochemistry and think, well, I'm going to avoid that topics. And you might have absolutely loved genetics, so you think, oh, I'm going to do largely genetics. But again, if you're still unsure, you can take that generalist degree, right? So and focus in on different topics. So for now, don't worry about it. Some of the most interesting people I know still don't know what they're doing in 5 years, right? So that fear never changes, like what you want to do.
Okay, next question, I guess, is for our students. With student living in the city and student housing, does studying in London make it hard to meet expenses? So how are you finding it financially? Anyone want to take that one?
I'd say that with like student finance, you get slightly high student finance for living in London, so that can help. And in first year, for example, you get allocated accommodation from UCL, and that usually covers bills and stuff like that. So first year, like I'd say the expenses aren't too bad for living in London. And then once you get into second and third year, a lot of students live a bit further out of London where the prices aren't too expensive. So, like right now I'm living sort of out west and it's a lot cheaper than living in central London. But I think like it's definitely more expensive than living somewhere else in the UK because London is just expensive. But you do get higher student finance, and I personally think it's worth it for living in London. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, great. Next question, we've got quite a few. So what are the differences and benefits of a master's versus a bachelor if you would like to pursue a PhD?
Okay, so if you want to do a PhD, it's now essential to have a master's. Although it's not explicit on, say, if you look at a PhD application, what they expect, it probably might not be explicitly said that you need to have a master's. But the fact is there is now such a large body of students graduating with BScs that the competition is such way that you need to have a master's if you're doing a PhD today. That wasn't always the case. I never did a master's. I went straight from a BSc to a PhD. Since I've been working here in this current position since 2012, certainly there have been some students who have gone from a BSc to a PhD. One thing they have in common is that they are kind of very exceptional students. So, the top 1% of their particular cohort. For the vast majority of students, you need to have a master's and either an MSci or an MSc degree because there's just such a large competition for PhD places these days. Number of undergraduates has gone up a lot, but the number of PhD places that are available hasn't gone up as much. Or in fact, in many cases, hasn't gone up at all. It's actually gone down. So because of the larger competition, if you're thinking of a PhD, you have to be thinking of doing an MSci or MSc.
Thanks, Alex. I've seen your second question, but if I can, I'll take Layla's question and ask our students to come in on this. So for students, what is the workload like and how difficult was the transition to studying degree level biological sciences?
I can answer this one. So for me, I think the workload, it's manageable. Only if you, especially if you're living not with your parents in accommodations, it's really your responsibility to keep yourself in check in fulfilling each assignment that you get. If you miss one or miss two, that's okay. But if you consistently are missing assignments or if not attending, especially the importance of lectures, it can really snowball where like you're trying to cover what you didn't do before and then you're missing out on like the latest like assignments and it can really build up. So that is very important now that you're in university and you've got your own responsibilities. And then, sorry, what was the rest of the question? It was how difficult is it transitioning? Sorry, the comments keep on coming and I can't with
Yeah, how difficult it was, the transition to studying degree level biological sciences, and what's the workload like?
Yeah, so especially with it also depends on your optional modules. So I did chemistry for biologists in comparison to you could do fundamentals for biology, and then introduction to microbiology against biodiversity and conservation. Those modules can also have an impact on the workload. So for me, I saw that chemistry for biologists had a greater workload in comparison to fundamentals. And it's a lot more dedication, but you do get a lot more out of it. So it's important when choosing your modules in those regards. And then, yeah, that's basically, yeah.
Sorry, is it okay if I can also add on to that? Yeah, so I definitely echo a lot of Michelle's takes, but I think in the transition point is going to be the hardest in first year specifically. And I would say depending on how used to you are with structuring your own time and how good you are with like organizing your tasks, that would be the key challenge. So I'd say the challenge with first year and then like really settling into university in second year is not so much the academic workload in itself. I think the academic workload is actually really manageable, and there's loads of sort of teaching support to make sure that students from different curriculums or are able to homogeneously learn to the same extent. But I think it really, what matters is your personal sort of ability to keep on top of things, and that would be something I would really encourage you to keep in mind right from the start. But if you are having a hard time with that, there's always loads of support. So in first year specifically, you have these first year mentors that you can speak to for all students, which you don't really have access to from second year onwards, but they exist so that they make your transition easy. So it doesn't matter how small of an issue you're having. It doesn't matter if you're just not able to have 3 meals a day and you just don't know how to prioritize that. It doesn't have to be purely academic, because these non-academic things do feed into the way you end up prioritizing your academics. So these first year mentors are there, their student advisors are there to help support with that. So yeah, I wouldn't say you should stress too much about the purely academic side of things. They are quite good at making sure the workload's fine, but it's really a personal sort of interpersonal skill management thing that you'd need to focus on.
Thanks, Kavya. Anyone else want to feed into that one? Anyone else? Okay. Okay, then next one, when specializing in one of the 7 courses, is it competitive, or are you pretty much guaranteed a place in whichever one you want?
No, there's no restrictions. So we don't cap the number of students that can do different degrees. So whichever degree you want to do, you can do. The one issue can be module selection, where some modules can get filled up very quickly. So they have caps in terms of how many students they can take. So that can sometimes be an issue, particularly if you want to do a module that isn't listed as an optional module. If it's an elective module, those can get filled up and you might find you're not able to do that degree. For any biol module, if you're a student in the biological sciences, we wouldn't put a cap on that. You'll be able to take that module. If there's like a cell module or bioc module, it may be the case they have numbers of caps. We try to minimize the effects of this as much as possible, and I'm sure it shouldn't be a major factor for you. But it's the one caveat of having so many different optional modules throughout the degree, is that these caps can have an issue. But in terms of the degrees, what degree you take, absolutely no caps at all.
Great. Next question from Emma. If I choose to focus my degree in the zoology program, but still want to come out with a biological sciences degree, how would that work? And would employers, for example, see that?
So in terms of what you come out with, if you're staying on the generalist pathway, you would come out with a biological sciences MSc, MSci. In terms of what the employers will see, that is what will officially be on your transcript. Your transcript will also state what modules you take. So if you are interested in a zoology approach, you might take more physiology-based optional modules, right? So, or animal biodiversity based modules. So those modules will appear on your transcript as well. You know, in terms of like, you know, some employers won't want to see a transcript, but they will want to see a certificate of your degree, in which case they won't have any clue that you took zoology-based degrees. And similarly, on your CV, in the long term, you probably just have a couple of lines saying you did a degree here at UCL in biological sciences. So yes, so I hope that's answered the question. So it depends. The only thing it would officially appear on will be your transcripts, your modules that you take.
Question from Emma. Would the computational modules be challenging if you don't have A-level maths? Like, so I guess for our students, do any of you not have A-level maths and are doing the computational modules, and how do you find it?
I don't think there are any computational biologists here from that.
Yeah, I'm doing computational biology.
Okay.
But I did do A-level maths, but I can also kind of give my view on it, because I think first year like quantitative biology is mainly statistics. So I guess you have that in A-level maths, but if you don't have that knowledge, it's not difficult to pick up on. If you go into second year and you choose the computational biology module, that's definitely more maths heavy. And specifically, I think computational biology, there's a lot of like matrices, matrix calculations and stuff like that. And that's something that can be a bit tricky to pick up on in the beginning, even as someone that did A-level maths, because it's been such a long time since you've done it. But I would say that's not it. Like, if you have that basic biological knowledge, it's not difficult to teach yourself, and they give you the basics of what you need. Most of computational biology is coding, like especially the computational biology second year module is mainly in R, so it's more heavy towards that than like the mathematical like basis. That's kind of just teaching you what you're doing and then you're applying it. So yeah.
Great. Question from Yusra. Other than careers in research, what are some of the careers that biological science graduates go into?
So yeah, so I mentioned at the start there, a lot of our students go into careers that are related, where they need to have an understanding of biological research, right? So some of those already mentioned, like consultative, I mentioned before, how you could be consulted to do the ecological survey. The civil service often need to have consultants who understand biological research. So I've had students who've gone into working in governments. I've had students who have gone into drug development, pharmaceuticals. I've had students who've gone into teaching, students who have gone into who've done. I've actually had 2 students who've gone into law, so they were interested in biological patents, and they did law conversion degrees and have gone into patent law, and they're doing incredibly well. You know, they're both now kind of in law firms. So even those kind of, and she said, like, you know, having an understanding of research is really important in those particular fields. So there is quite a lot of, you know, a lot of the skills you develop here are quite transferable into these different degrees, different careers, I should say.
Another kind of the couple of career related things from Alex. So if I'm interested in biomedical science and the biotechnology field, but also finance, and earlier Alex also asked about, do many people do biotech startups?
If you're interested in biomedical sciences, there is a degree in biomedical sciences which might be of more relevance. And I think even, do engineering do a biotechnology degree? I'm sure there's an undergraduate degree in that particular field as well. In terms of startups, I know of one that one of my students had gone into. So again, I can't really say, as I don't know where every student ends up with. I only kind of know those, but largely that my personal tutees that they go on to do. And one of those students is working in AI and neuroscience in Estonia, in a startup based over there. So I wouldn't say this degree is well focused on finance. We have a business for biological sciences, but if that finance and biotechnology is of more interest, I would say we wouldn't be so strong for your specific interests here, Alex.
Great, thanks. Maybe this next one, if we start with the students before you giving an overview, Lawrence, but how many students decide to do the master's program at UCL? Is it common to apply for a master's in another university? So any of our students want to comment on that? And if you were wanting to do a master's, would you want to carry on and do it at UCL, or would you want to go somewhere else?
I would say just to start off, it's about 50-50 in terms of those who do the BSc or the Masters. Yeah. But
yes.
I'll let the students say which ones they want to do and why.
Sorry. So yeah, I'm a master's student currently, so I'm on the 4-year integrated master's program. And I think there's, for me, it just made sense to do the master's here because as an international, one of the main benefits is you get to sort of cap your fees at the fees that you start paying in your first year. So a lot of master's programs would be sort of 8 or 9 grand more if you were to do it separately. But then for international, which is already quite high for international students, and then with the integrated masters, you sort of lock your fees with the masters in with your first year like undergraduate rates. So that's obviously a huge financial benefit. But outside of that, because most of the research that I'm interested in, my specialist stream and a lot of the research facilities and the professors at UCL, they are involved in that, and there are sort of cross-departmental collaborations that are permissible. So even if you are within the GEE for your master's project, as long as you are able to independently find an external researcher in any other department or faculty in UCL, if that appeals to you, you can still do a master's in that lab. Obviously, the caveat there is you would have, I guess, lesser support and oversight with the specifics of the master's project, which is run by GEE, but that's sort of an individual choice that you'll have to make. And I know a couple of my friends who are doing, even if not integrated masters, so there's a huge cohort of us who have stayed back for the integrated masters, but I know other friends who have gone on to do more specialized master's degrees within UCL with the neuroscience department, or with Great Ormond Street, which is like more cell and gene therapies focused, precision medicine focused, and even within the medical sciences field. So there's sort of, I think, applied nutrition and more cancer specialist degrees, even at the undergrad level, but then at the master's level as well. And I know a lot of friends that are pursuing that. So I think it's not to, I think UCL has a great breadth of research topics that they're covering. And I find that my stream, which is the cell stream, sort of primes you to have a nice background in a lot of different topics, so that when you want to go on to do your master's, really you can do it anywhere with any lab as long as it interests you. And for me, being at UCL interested me, so I just stayed back.
Anybody else want to comment on that one? Okay, another one for students then. Do any of the students commute rather than living in halls? And if so, how do you find it socially? The commuters here.
I was commuting in my second year, so it wasn't a huge commute because I do prefer to live as close to campus as possible. But like Erin mentioned, I think it is sort of a toss-up between if you live further away, it's cheaper, and if you live close to central London, it is more expensive. In second year, when I did commute, I lived with other friends, so I shared a flat with some of my closest friends from first year, and I've sort of continued to live with those friends over the course of my degree. And I think there's benefits to both, right? So being close to campus, being in student halls, you have a bigger pool of people and friends that you probably meet, but then you're going to be really close to campus, which means the like cutoff point between academics and being home is a bit more blurred. But if you are the further away you are, you're just going to stay back on campus, have a 9-to-5 lifestyle where you're getting done with everything, which is also good if you want to structure your day effectively. And then you have a nice sort of break from that physically when you're not in that environment. So I think it is a personal preference. Living with some of my closest mates in second year meant that I still felt socially fulfilled, and I didn't live too far away from zone 1, so I still think I had access to a lot of the fun sort of events and places that you can go to in zone 1 and have a more functioning social life, and then meet friends that might even still be staying in halls. So it's a toss up, but I think there's loads of students that still make it work. I know friends that live in zone 3 or zone 4, which is a bit more further away from central London, that still have really thriving social lives. So it really is like up to you to prioritize things differently, but it is possible.
I'd also like to add, if you guys are really worried about your social life, I'd suggest really utilizing societies, because it's a collective of people that really share your interests. And in those like places, I found some of my closest friends there. So utilizing that sort of stuff, like you don't even need to just do one society, you could try multiple societies, and then you that way you're bound to find someone that you'll like connect with.
Great. Question on pharmaceuticals and biological sciences. For pharmaceuticals, does biological sciences in a more broad degree further you in the field the same as a pharmacy degree?
Well, the pharmacy and biological sciences are different types of degrees. A pharmacy degree is one where there kind of are legal expectations in terms of what a student can do at the end, right? So a pharmacy degree, there's a particular group who say this is what a pharmacist needs to know at the end of their degree, you know, all to do with kind of drugs, interactions. Biological sciences isn't like that. So we're not teaching you, there are optional modules you can do in terms of drugs. So drugs in the mind, for example, how can different drugs affect cognitive behavior? That's an optional module that's available for our different degrees. But we aren't one that set you up to be a pharmacist. But if your pharmaceutical is kind of research in drugs, and a lot of kind of what you learn here on biological sciences is applicable to those sorts of degrees. So in genetics, for example, there's a big kind of movement in towards personalized medicine. So if you get certain leukemias, for example, you might have sections of your genome sequenced, because those particular genotypes that you are may determine how well you respond to different drugs, right? So that idea, kind of that personalized medicine, is relevant in pharmaceuticals and is highly applicable, and it's taught within the genetics and human genetics degrees. So it kind of depends what you want to be. If you want to be more of the pharmacist, then do a degree in pharmacy. If you're interested in kind of wider research approaches, then the biological sciences would be of interest. But they're very different types of degrees. So again, UCL, we have a pharmacy. We're one of the world leading departments that teach pharmacy, but it's a very different type of degree, you know, less kind of research focused and more about meeting the expectations of what a pharmacist has to be.
Great. Question from just some of our students have answered some of our questions, so I'm just what are you looking for in biological sciences applications?
So in terms of the kind of the application itself, what we wouldn't want to see is somebody who's not primarily interested in biology. So if you want to go on to do medicine or veterinary, and you've applied maybe to do biology as a backup, you're not going to get into UCL biological sciences. We are kind of a high demand degree. You know, we've never gone into clearing, for example. We've always kind of met our admissions criteria. And the people we've only ever accepted are those who are interested in biological sciences. We don't, at the same time, we don't expect you to have had research experience working in a biological sciences lab, because very few students actually get the opportunity to do that. It's extremely difficult for our undergraduates to get placements in labs in their first and second year. They are incredibly competitive. So we're not expecting you to have worked within a research lab or that sort of thing. But if you have like interests in biology, that's all you need. What are your interests? What have you read, you know, beyond your high school textbooks? What books have you read that fueled this interest? So that's what we want to see. That's all we really want to see. And that's all we can really expect to see. So it's just why you want to do biology, what fields of biology you're interested in, maybe a little bit how you want to learn it, or what you want to do after your degree as well. Again, we don't expect you to completely decide, but if you have some idea, again, that's really nice to see kind of how that degree would fit in to kind of your wider long-term goals.
I think that's most of the questions answered. I mean, we've got a follow-up from Alex, request to our students. Would you say a management degree at LSE would be more suited than a master's in biotech and pharma management, or something like BSc bioengineering? What
I
the
would
current
say I
students
don't know what LSE
think about
degrees
this?
are. It's not my job.
Yeah.
I would say you need to go to the LSE open days, but it sounds like your interests are slightly more on the management. So yeah, I'd probably, you know, I'm not going to say our degree is something it isn't. Is it well suited for financial? It's not primarily set up for that.
Okay, I think that's pretty much everything. I mean, we're a bit over time, so I guess we've got a couple of minutes if anyone wants to ask a final question. But other than that, I'll just, if you've got follow-up questions, I'll just put the admissions email in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, the admissions emails get forwarded to me. And I do respond to them straight away. I don't know how quickly they forward them, but those biosciences admissions, if it's related to the biological sciences, it's me who would be answering them in the end. But yeah, I guess the one thing I would say is just, you're doing the right thing. Go to all the different open days. If you can go to the in-person ones, I think that's even better, but I completely understand that's not available to everybody. But I'm sure you make the right decisions, and I really do wish you the very best. I just hope they're at UCL.